This is the Pet Buzz.
This is the Pet Buzz.
And here's the dynamic pet duo.
As a result of Charlotte's newly found obsession with raccoons.
I've got a lot of obsessions.
Joining us today is Dr. Marcie Logsdon, clinical instructor, the College of Veterinary Medicine, Washington State University. So give us an overview of the raccoon.
Raccoons are really amazing little animals, and they've actually got a lot of fun similarities to people. Of course, first and foremost, they are incredibly intelligent. They're also omnivores, so they have a wide variety, like a hugely varied diet. And just like people, individual raccoons will develop particular preferences, but they're very, very flexible. There's a lot of different things that they'll eat. They have very dexterous little front paws that are honestly very similar to hands. They have opposable thumbs that lets them get into all sorts of trouble. And they have pretty variable social habits. Some raccoons tend to stay by themselves. Others will kind of join up into small groups. And they're incredibly adaptable. They're found all throughout North and Central America, everywhere from Canada down through Central America. And they'll live everywhere from your typical setting, like out in the woods, to super urban areas with a high people presence. And most of the time, they're pretty stealthy about it. People don't even know that they're there.
You know, it's interesting. We're hearing all these good things about raccoons from Dr. Marcie, but at the same time, we know that they can carry rabies, right? So if you do see a raccoon in your environment, why is it a good idea to know what diseases raccoons carry and what preventative measures can be taken, especially if you have pets like we do?
Yeah, and especially if you have pets, there's several diseases that you need to be concerned about with raccoons. One is that there is a parasite that they can carry and pass on in their feces. And so just making sure that if you find an area that raccoons are using as latrine, don't play there. Don't let your kids play there or your pets play there. They can also, in some areas of the country, they can carry rabies. And of course, that's something that people are always concerned about. The biggest protection there is just to make sure that you're giving them an appropriate amount of space if you ever do come across one in the wild, and that your pets are vaccinated for rabies. The rabies vaccine is very, very good. Similarly, distemper would be one other one that raccoons can carry. It's very, very devastating to raccoons as well, but it can go back and forth between our pets like dogs and raccoons. But again, we've got a really good vaccine for it. So just making sure that your pets are vaccinated is the best way to keep them safe.
Now, I don't think you mentioned the first disease. Were you talking about lepto?
I didn't actually mention lepto. Most wild animals can carry lepto. It's something that's passed in the urine. The other one that's kind of specific that I mentioned at first with the feces is a parasite called Bacillus ascaris that you'll sometimes hear about folks getting in trouble with. The big thing would be, again, kids not paying attention or small children playing in an area that raccoons have been using as a bathroom. And raccoons do tend to habitually form spots that they use as latrines. So if you've got an adult kind of keeping an eye out, they're pretty easy to avoid.
So these diseases can be transmitted to your pet and then transmitted to you too also? Is that correct?
Rabies is a disease that people can be susceptible to. Obviously, for that one, you have to be bit by a rabid animal. Distemper is pretty animal specific. People aren't going to catch distemper. And then the Bacillus ascaris, that pesky parasite, it's pretty opportunistic and can kind of go anywhere. Your pets aren't going to be able to transmit it to you if they catch it. It's kind of a dead end host kind of thing. But you could catch it directly from playing with raccoon poop. Just avoid playing with poop.
Very well. As Charlotte said in her introduction, she saw a raccoon both during the day and at night. And from what I understood, raccoons are nocturnal. So if you see a raccoon during the day, should we be alarmed?
Not necessarily. Just like most people are diurnal, but you'll sometimes see us out at night. There are things that can cause a raccoon to move around during the day. One of the most straightforward ones would be if the spot that they're spending the day, that they're all bedded up or denned up in, if they get disturbed from that spot, they're gonna move and they're gonna go try to find a different place. Or two, during the summer when the days are really, really long, sometimes they just don't have enough nighttime to get everything they need to get done in their day, especially if they're feeding babies. And so you might be more likely to see them then, especially evening and late evening and early morning. So there's reasons that they can be out around.
Okay, so that he didn't look sick or anything. They usually say if you see a raccoon during the day and it looks sick, it's kind of like wobbly, definitely stay away, right?
Oh yeah, you definitely want to stay away if you see an animal that looks sick. And again, there are some times that wild animals can appear sick when they're not. But usually if you see one that's out and around during the day, acting odd, you definitely want to give it some space. And if the situation doesn't resolve itself, then you might want to consider calling someone like your local Fish and Wildlife or local wildlife rehabilitator to kind of come and assess the situation. But sometimes too, again, coming back to the mama raccoons, if she's just had babies and she's nursing, she's going to look kind of skinny and pretty ragged. And again, she might be one who's more likely to be out during the day just trying to forage and keep up with everything.
Okay, so under what circumstances should a human be wary of an aggressive raccoon, and what should he or she do?
Yeah, and I would say that people should always be wary of any aggressive animal, especially wildlife. If an animal is showing signs of aggression, most likely they're feeling cornered and scared. And what they're asking essentially in their way is they're asking for people or whatever the situation is to back off and give them space. But that being said, if you see an animal or a raccoon that's acting aggressive and the behavior doesn't go away, or you go back, you leave it some space, and then you see that a couple hours later it's still acting abnormally in that same spot, then again it might be a good time to reach out to a wildlife professional. Similarly, if the animal is cornered or acting aggressive in a place where there's others that might be in danger, so small children again, or if there's if you end up with a cornered raccoon in a backyard where there's some dogs or something, those situations can take a turn for the worse. So you may want to reach out earlier to, again, your local wildlife department or a wildlife rehabilitator.
So if you're surprised, all of a sudden you walk home and there's a raccoon in your home, what should you do?
Or in your roof? Because my sister had raccoons in like her walls and a seal, the attic.
Wow.
Yeah, two kind of different questions there. First, if a raccoon suddenly is in like the living space of your house, I would recommend three things. One, I would make sure that you get any pets or kids out of the way, because again, you don't want somebody who doesn't know better to end up getting hurt or get in a scuffle with a raccoon. Two, leave a window or a door, an easy, obvious exit strategy wide open, because sometimes these situations will take care of themselves, but then back out, give them some space, and again, call a wildlife professional. So either one of your local wildlife departments, or if you're in a larger urban area, there are some services that help specialize in moving animals that are in problematic places. And I definitely recommend talking to if you do go the kind of pest control route, I do recommend talking to them first and finding out what their plan is with the raccoon, because that raccoon probably has a home territory of between a half square mile and several square miles. And it doesn't necessarily need to be driven 5 counties away or taken out and euthanized. It just needs to get brought out of your house. And then those professionals too can take a look at your house and see how it got in and keep that problem from happening again.
Great.
Good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing, if I can just touch on it really quickly, what you're mentioning about raccoons in attics, because we do get that call quite a few times. People usually find them when the babies start making a little bit of noise. And similarly, those mama raccoons, they've got some kind of backup nesting spots and plans. And so if you can work with a professional, there's ways to encourage her to move her babies out. And then you can board stuff up. So you don't have to be sitting there and worried like, either I have to leave these raccoons here forever, or I'm going to disrupt this family. There's a nice happy medium that more and more professionals will help you get to.
One of the things I was curious as I was prepping for this interview, I started to think about one of Dr. Fleck's employees who has a raccoon as a pet. Do you encourage that?
Not really. There's a lot of issues with keeping animals that are not domesticated as pets. One of the big ones, again, that Felis asperis, that parasite, is something that we are concerned about. There is some disease transmission concern between raccoons and humans. And then also they're not domesticated. And so a lot of people can very easily get it over their head and suddenly have a hard time providing the care that they need. In some states, it's not legal. And I will also mention too, that a lot of states, even if it's legal in that state to keep a raccoon, because in some areas raccoons can carry things like rabies, most states don't want raccoons being transported across state lines at all. And so in my mind, it's a very problematic pet to have that you might not be able to take with you if your life circumstances change and you have to move.
Well, Dr. Logsdon, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about raccoons. So Charlotte, do you feel better?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, in prepping for this interview, I watched all these videos and watched raccoons open boxes and locks. I mean, they're really, truly amazing.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Pet Buzz.